September 1939. Hitler invades Poland. World War II is declared. Soon, the Nazis will build more than 10 concentration and extermination camps throughout Poland, including the one that will become the most famous, Auschwitz. At the Vatican, Pope Pius XII is well aware of what is happening behind the ever-expanding borders of Nazi Germany. He is under surveillance and faces threats, yet he cannot remain silent. As the leader of Christendom, he must stand as a defender of peace and justice. Yet, a single man, a priest with no official position in Rome, prevents him from doing so. In his view, explicitly denouncing Nazi barbarism and the extermination of the Jews is out of the question. And so, Pope Pius XII will remain silent for a long time in the face of Nazi atrocities. A silence that will later be judged as deafening and for which many criticize him. The priest is German. He has been at the Pope's side for over 15 years and remains there throughout the war, playing a pivotal role between the resistance and the Church. A role with two faces. This is the story of Robert Leiber, the Jesuit in the shadow of Pius XII. In the summer of 1942, war rages across the world. At the Vatican, Pope Pius XII withdraws into solitude to reflect. He has just learned of the deportation of more than 40,000 Dutch Jews by the Nazis. He searches for the right words to publish his first public declaration in L'Osservatore Romano, explicitly denouncing the persecution of Jews in Europe. Deep in thought, he is interrupted by his advisor, Robert Leiber. Leiber enters the private apartments, displeased, carrying handwritten papers. He has just come across a draft of the declaration written in the Pope's own hand. He cannot allow the Holy Father to issue such a protest. He reminds the Pope of the reason for the deportations in the Netherlands. Just days earlier, Dutch bishops had read aloud in every church a letter condemning the unjust and merciless treatment of the Jews. In retaliation, the Germans deported to death camps all Jews who had converted to Catholicism. They stormed monasteries and convents to arrest Catholics of Jewish origin, including the philosopher Edith Stein. Father Leiber tries to reason with Pius XII. He seeks to convince him that a denunciation from the head of the Church would have even worse consequences than the deportations in the Netherlands following the bishop's protest. To Leiber, silence is the only way to protect the Church and Christians while continuing to act in secret. Pius XII defers to his advisor. To prevent widespread retaliation, he follows his recommendation. The Pope looks at his friend and asks him to burn the draft of his declaration. It's only months later, on Christmas Eve 1942, that Pope Pius XII officially condemns the horrors of war for the first time, but in carefully measured terms. This solemn wish, humanity owes it to the hundreds of thousands of people who, through no fault of their own, sometimes solely because of their nationality or origin, have been destined for death or gradual extermination.
Le quali senza veruna colpa propria, talora solo per ragioni di nazionalità o di stirpe, sono destinate alla morte o ad un progressivo deperimento.
Some regret that the words Jews and Nazis are not explicitly mentioned. The voice of Father Leiber's prudence still echoes in Pius XII's ears. That caution has its roots in what Leiber has witnessed in the preceding years. Pope Pius XII knows Father Leiber well. They've been working together for 18 years. They first meet in 1924 when the first pope, then known as Eugenio Pacelli, is appointed apostolic nuncio to Germany, representing the Pope directly. To prepare for his mission, he needs to consolidate secret archives, a task he entrusts to Father Leiber, who knows Germany well, having been born there in 1887 and having worked in Bavaria for 7 years. Pacelli appreciates his work and wants to keep this erudite German church historian by his side. He asks the Jesuit order, to which Leiber belongs, to let him stay for a few months. He will remain for over 30 years. After Germany, the future Pope Pius XII is appointed Vatican Secretary of State in 1930, making him the second most powerful figure after the Pope. His role is to negotiate a concordat between the Church and the German state. Father Leiber works intensely with him on this. After extensive deliberations and with Pope Pius XI's approval, a concordat is signed in 1933 between the future Pope Pius XII and Franz von Papen, the representative of the new Chancellor of the Reich, Adolf Hitler. The Church sees this agreement as a way to protect the Catholics from state interference. The German government has already taken unprecedented measures 50 years earlier to subjugate the Catholic Church under state control. This Kulturkampf campaign, led by Chancellor Bismarck, had left deep scars. For Hitler, the Concordat is a means to solidify his regime by securing Catholic support. He declares, "The conclusion of the Concordat seems to provide a sufficient guarantee that Reich citizens of Catholic faith will henceforth place themselves unreservedly at the service of the new National Socialist state." Yet, this agreement that is supposed to protect Catholics will never be honored by Hitler. The future Pope Pius XII then tasks a lawyer, Joseph Müller, with gathering evidence of Nazi Germany's violations of the Concordat. With Leiber's support, he sends 55 protest letters to the German government between 1934 and 1939. They will have no effect. The Church's strongest opposition to Nazism comes in 1937 with the publication of the encyclical Mit brennender Sorge, which means in English, with a burning concern, by Pope Pius XI. The future Pope Pius XII is the driving force behind this text. As its chief author, he ensures that every line is approved by the Pope while working with various German bishops to guarantee the document has the desired impact. To avoid censorship and Gestapo interception, the encyclical is secretly printed and distributed to German bishops, who pass it on to all their parish priests. On Palm Sunday, in March 1937, the encyclical is read from the pulpit in every church in Germany. It is a clear condemnation of the Nazi regime and its ideology. The press unanimously reports on it. The response is immediate. Hundreds of priests are arrested and sent to concentration camps, and dozens of Catholic institutions are shut down. The Church's condemnation is heard, but the future Pope Pius XII sees that every word spoken by the Pope triggers tragic consequences from the Nazis. He will never forget it, and this will shape his future decisions. In February 1939, Pope Pius XI dies. In early March, the conclave of cardinal electors convenes to select the new pope. The result comes swiftly. Pius XII is elected unanimously, except for his own vote. 6 months later, World War II begins. From the very start of the war, German officers oppose Hitler. Admiral Canaris is one of them. He heads the Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service. Fiercely anti-Nazi, he seeks someone for a high-risk mission: infiltrating the Vatican to establish a contact point with the Pope. The goal is to allow the German resistance to negotiate an armistice with the Allies in the event of a coup against Hitler. For this mission, he needs a man with connections at the Vatican, someone opposed to Nazi Germany and willing to risk his life for the German resistance. One name stands out: Joseph Müller, the lawyer who gathered evidence of the Reich's violations of the Concordat. Admiral Canaris knows that Pope Pius XII and Müller are close, having worked together on the Concordat. He also knows that Pius XII allowed Müller to celebrate his wedding in the crypt of St. Peter's Basilica, directly above the tomb of the first apostle, a rare privilege granted in recognition of his services. By September 1939, Admiral Canaris recruits Müller into the Abwehr and sends him on a mission to spy on the Vatican. But no one realizes that this is just a cover. In reality, Müller is acting as an informant for the Vatican. As soon as Müller arrives, he meets Father Leiber. This will be the first of many meetings, as Leiber will be his contact throughout the war. The communication channel is simple. Müller arrives to the Vatican, meets Father Leiber in a small church in Rome, and hands him documents about the German resistance. Leiber, who speaks with the Pope several times a day, passes along the messages. Pius XII then summons the British ambassador to the Holy See and relays the information. The diplomat, in turn, sends a report to the British government via diplomatic courier. The message went through. Each trip brings new evidence of Nazi atrocities. Muller delivers photos, videos, and detailed documents on the mass execution of Jews in Germany and Poland. He also provides the Pope with concrete information about the plot to eliminate Hitler. Responses follow the same communication channel in reverse. During the first 3 years of the war, Joseph Muller makes more than 150 trips between Germany and the Vatican. Father Leiber becomes the intermediary between the German resistance and the Pope. The Abwehr even assigns him a code name, Gregor, in reference to his role as a professor at the Gregorian University. The Pope has a code name as well. They call Pius XII the Chief. According to Father Leiber, when he informed the Pope of his code name, Pius XII smiled and thanked the conspirators for their trust. By 1942, Pope Pius XII is well aware of the fate the Nazis reserved for the Jews. So why does he remain so silent in the face of horror? Everyone around him urges him to keep quiet. Father Leiber, first and foremost, constantly warns him to be cautious in his statements. Leiber has not forgotten what happened in the Netherlands, where Jewish converts and priests were deported after the bishops spoke out against Nazi policies. He is convinced that a public condemnation of Hitler's crimes would have devastating consequences for Catholics in Nazi-occupied territories. The conspirators working with Joseph Muller also plead with the Pope to refrain from making any public statements condemning the Nazis, because such remarks would make German Catholics even more suspect than they already are and severely limit their ability to act in the resistance. On top of this, the Vatican faces real and immediate threats. Hitler and Mussolini have plans to kidnap the Pope and invade the Vatican. If they discover that the leader of Christendom is involved in a plot to overthrow Hitler, the fate of both the Church and Pius XII himself will be sealed. Despite this danger, the Pope instructs Leiber to continue passing messages to the resistance. However, Pius XII decides to remain publicly silent. He chooses to work in the shadows. But many World War II historians do not accept this choice. They heavily criticize Pius XII's silence. 5 years after his death, the 1963 play The Deputy by Rolf Hochhuth cements this criticism in public consciousness.
M. Hochhuth met en cause l'autorité spirituelle morale par excellence, le pape Pie XII.
The play is a direct attack on the Pope and, more broadly, on the Church's actions during the war. Some even begin referring to Pius XII as Hitler's Pope. However, controversy surrounds the play. It is later revealed that the KGB may have orchestrated a smear campaign to tarnish the Church's image. In 2020, the opening of the Vatican archives helps clarify the truth, highlighting the Pope's critical role behind the scenes. It's to act freely without implicating the Vatican that Pope Pius XII relies on Father Leiber. Leiber has no official title in Rome, and his position as the Pope's personal secretary was never formally documented. Leiber meets with numerous spies and foreign envoys seeking contact with Pius XII. As the Pope's trusted advisor, everyone knows they must go through him. One day, a German acquaintance of Leiber arrives in Rome, looking for information on the Pope. Leiber meets him and quickly realizes that the man works for Himmler's intelligence service. Himmler, Hitler's right-hand man. Leiber warns the Pope, who instructs him to continue meeting with his friend, but only to provide carefully selected information. The game is delicate. Leiber also maintains contact with American intelligence agents, passing along documents. Meanwhile, Pope Pius XII looks for ways to act within Rome itself. He sends a discreet message to convents and monasteries. Open your doors to Jews, as they are at risk of deportation. In 1961, Father Leiber will write in Civilita Cattolica that approximately 150 religious institutions and a few parishes sheltered 4,500 Jews for months under the Pope's guidance. To ensure the safety of these refugees and preserve the Vatican's neutrality, Pius XII personally hides thousands of Jews in the papal summer residence. Father Leiber believed that the Pope went way too far in his support for the resistance. He considered Pius XII's actions reckless and the consequences too dangerous. Yet, after the war, the Pope's silence on the Holocaust will be bitterly condemned. Pius XII dies in 1958, and Father Leiber dedicates himself to defending his legacy. He writes numerous articles and speaks out repeatedly to reveal the hidden reality of Pius XII's actions, his support for the resistance, his efforts to protect Jews across Italy, and even his role in sheltering them in the Pope's own gardens. A 2024 exhibition at Castel Gandolfo illustrates how 10,000 people found refuge there in 1944. The criticism of Pius XII deeply affects Father Leiber, who had, ironically, spent years trying to restrain the Pope's involvement in the resistance. Leiber dies in Rome in 1967, after burning all his personal papers, an unobjectionable act in itself, yet one that continues to fuel speculation.